Have you ever wondered what would happen if you applied an ancient philosophy to modern life? Not just as an intellectual exercise, but as a genuine attempt to transform your daily existence? That's exactly what I decided to find out when I embarked on a month-long experiment living strictly according to Stoic principles. Before I dive into what happened during this philosophical journey, let me introduce myself and explain why I chose Stoicism of all philosophies. For years, I've been fascinated by how ancient wisdom might address our contemporary challenges: anxiety, distraction, and the constant pressure to achieve more. Stoicism, a philosophy founded in Athens around 300 BCE, seemed particularly relevant to our modern predicament. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or maintaining a stiff upper lip, as popular misconceptions might suggest. Rather, it's a sophisticated system for developing inner resilience, focusing on what we can control, and finding tranquility amid life's inevitable chaos. The Stoics, figures like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, taught that true happiness comes not from external circumstances but from cultivating virtue and wisdom. My experiment was simple in concept but challenging in execution. For 30 days, I would live according to core Stoic principles. This meant starting each morning with meditation and reflection, practicing the dichotomy of control by focusing only on what I could influence, viewing obstacles as opportunities, conducting evening reviews of my actions, and embracing voluntary discomfort to build resilience. Why did I choose to do this? Like many of us, I found myself increasingly reactive to the world around me, angry at traffic jams, anxious about work deadlines, and upset when people didn't behave as I thought they should. I was constantly distracted by social media, worried about the future, and dwelling on the past. In essence, I was the perfect anti-stoic, allowing external events to dictate my emotional state. The rules I set for myself were rigorous. Each morning began with a meditation on potential challenges I might face that day. I kept a Stoic journal, recording my thoughts and reactions. I practiced negative visualization, imagining losing things I valued to appreciate them more fully. I took cold showers to embrace discomfort. I even attempted what the Stoics called voluntary hardship, deliberately putting myself in challenging situations to build mental fortitude. What makes this experiment particularly relevant today is that we live in an age of unprecedented comfort and convenience. Yet studies show rising rates of anxiety and depression. Perhaps, I thought, the ancient Stoics had discovered something fundamental about human psychology that our comfort-oriented society has forgotten. Before this experiment, my understanding of Stoicism was largely theoretical. I had read the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius and Letters of Seneca, but there's a vast difference between intellectual appreciation and lived experience. Could these ancient practices actually transform my daily life? Would I become calmer, more focused, and less reactive? Or would I discover that Stoicism is impractical in our hyper-connected, fast-paced world? I should clarify that this wasn't about becoming emotionless or detached from life. The Stoics weren't advocating for emotional suppression, but rather emotional intelligence, feeling appropriate emotions without being overwhelmed by them. They distinguished between harmful emotions like anger or anxiety and helpful ones like joy or appropriate caution. Throughout this video series, I'll take you through my journey day by day, sharing the challenges I faced, the techniques I employed, and the surprising transformations I experienced. You'll witness my struggles with applying ancient wisdom to modern problems, from dealing with social media and smartphone addiction to navigating difficult workplace dynamics and personal relationships. I documented everything meticulously: my thoughts, reactions, failures, and breakthroughs. I tracked my mood, sleep quality, and stress levels, I noted how my interactions with others changed and how my perspective shifted on events both minor and significant. What emerged from this month-long experiment was not just a series of philosophical insights, but practical wisdom about how we might live more intentionally in our chaotic world. Whether you're a philosophy enthusiast or simply someone looking for more tranquility and purpose in daily life, this journey into practical stoicism offers valuable lessons about what truly matters and how we might respond more wisely to life's challenges. So join me as we explore what happened when I lived like a Stoic for an entire month. The struggles, the insights, and the unexpected ways this ancient philosophy transformed my modern life. Whether you're curious about Stoicism or searching for practical ways to cultivate resilience and peace of mind, this experiment may provide the inspiration you've been looking for. As the sun rose on day one of my Stoic experiment, I felt a curious mixture of excitement and trepidation. The philosophical framework I had studied was about to become my lived reality. Little did I know how quickly the gap between theory and practice would reveal itself. My first Stoic morning began at 5:30 a.m., deliberately earlier than my usual wake-up time. The Stoics valued the early hours for their tranquility and potential for uninterrupted contemplation. I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, a journal open beside me, and began what would become my daily morning meditation. Today, I may encounter people who frustrate me, tasks that challenge me, and circumstances beyond my control, I wrote, following the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, anticipating difficulties before they arise. I will remember that people act according to their nature, not mine, and that external events themselves cannot harm me. Only my judgments about them can. The first test came almost immediately. My morning commute, usually a source of irritation when faced with delays, became an opportunity to practice the dichotomy of control. When a traffic jam added 20 minutes to my journey, instead of my usual frustration, I reminded myself, the traffic is not in my control, my response to it is. This mental reframing worked surprisingly well for about 3 minutes. Then I found myself gripping the steering wheel, internally cursing the driver who had cut me off. My first Stoic failure had taken less than an hour. I made a note in my journal app. Day 1. Still reacting automatically. Need to create more space between stimulus and response. By midweek, I had established a rhythm. Each morning began with meditation, followed by a cold shower, a practice inspired by Seneca's recommendation to voluntarily embrace discomfort. Those first icy moments were genuinely shocking, eliciting an instinctive gasp every time. But I noticed something fascinating. While the initial shock never diminished, my relationship to it changed. I began to observe my body's reaction with a kind of detached curiosity rather than resistance. The workplace proved to be the most fertile ground for Stoic practice. When my boss announced unexpected deadline changes for our project, my colleagues reacted with visible stress. I attempted to apply Epictetus's principle. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Rather than joining the chorus of complaints, I focused on organizing my tasks according to what I could control. The result was remarkable. Not only did I feel less stressed, but my productivity actually increased. A colleague even commented on my unusual calmness, asking, "How are you not freaking out right now?" This led to an interesting lunch conversation about Stoicism, during which I realized that explaining the philosophy to others was deepening my own understanding. The evenings of that first week were dedicated to another Stoic practice, the examination of conscience. Before sleep, I would review my day, asking myself, where did I succeed in applying Stoic principles? Where did I fail? What could I do better tomorrow? This nightly reflection proved surprisingly powerful, creating a feedback loop that accelerated my learning. Not all aspects of the philosophy came easily. The Stoic approach to desire, wanting things to be exactly as they are, clashed dramatically with my ingrained habit of wanting to control outcomes. When a long-planned weekend hike was canceled due to unexpected rain, my disappointment was immediate and intense. The Stoic perspective that nature is neither good nor bad, it simply is, felt intellectually sound but emotionally unsatisfying. By the end of the first week, I had experienced both small victories and humbling failures. I found myself less reactive to minor annoyances, but still struggling with larger disappointments. My sleep had improved, perhaps due to the evening reflection practice clearing my mind before bed. Most notably, I was becoming more aware of the automatic thoughts that typically drove my emotional reactions. What surprised me most was how physical some aspects of Stoicism felt. The philosophy wasn't just changing my thoughts, but also my bodily responses: deeper breathing when stressed, a more relaxed posture, fewer stress headaches. Marcus Aurelius had written about the connection between mind and body, but experiencing this integration firsthand was revelatory. As I closed my journal on day 7, I realized that this experiment was already more profound than I had anticipated. Stoicism wasn't simply a set of intellectual concepts, but a comprehensive practice that was gradually rewiring my habitual responses to life. The question now was whether these early changes would deepen or whether I would hit a plateau as the novelty wore off. The foundation had been laid, but the real challenges and insights still lay ahead. The second week would test these nascent Stoic habits against more significant obstacles and emotional triggers. Could this ancient philosophy truly transform a modern mind conditioned by smartphones, social media, and constant stimulation? I was about to find out. As the second week dawned, the initial enthusiasm of novelty began to fade, revealing the true challenge of philosophical practice: consistency in the face of routine. The honeymoon phase of my Stoic experiment was ending, and the real work was beginning. My morning routine had solidified. The cold showers no longer required a pep talk. The meditations flowed more naturally, and my commute had become a deliberate practice space rather than merely time spent traveling. But as external habits stabilized, internal challenges intensified. Midway through the month, a significant test arrived in the form of a rejected project proposal I had spent weeks developing. Before my Stoic practice, this would have triggered days of rumination and self-doubt. As the email notification appeared on my screen, I felt the familiar surge of disappointment rising. The rejection itself is indifferent, I reminded myself, recalling Epictetus's core teaching that external events are neither good nor bad in themselves. What mattered was how I used this situation. Could it become an opportunity for growth rather than a source of suffering? Instead of dwelling on the rejection, I immediately scheduled time to review the feedback, identify improvements, and develop a stronger proposal. The shift wasn't in avoiding disappointment entirely. I still felt it, but in transforming it from a paralyzing emotion into productive energy. This wasn't emotional suppression, as critics of Stoicism often suggest, but rather emotional redirection. The third week brought personal challenges when a family disagreement erupted during a Sunday dinner. As tensions escalated around the table, I found myself applying the Stoic principle of seeing difficult people as training partners. My sister's criticism, which would normally have provoked a defensive reaction, became instead an opportunity to practice virtue. Remember, I thought to myself, she acts according to her own impressions of what is good. If her views seem wrong, it is she who is harmed by her own misconceptions, not me. This perspective allowed me to respond with genuine curiosity rather than defensiveness, asking questions to understand her position better. The conversation transformed from a potential argument into a meaningful exchange. Perhaps the most profound shift occurred during the final week, when I faced a challenge that struck at my core values. A competitive colleague took credit for my work during an important presentation. My immediate internal reaction was a storm of indignation and anger, emotions so powerful they seemed to demand expression. In that crucial moment between stimulus and response, I recalled Marcus Aurelius's words: "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." While I wouldn't allow the misattribution to stand uncorrected, I could choose how to address it. Instead of publicly confronting my colleague, I privately requested a follow-up email clarifying our respective contributions. The outcome was better than I could have imagined. Not only was the record corrected, but my composed response earned respect from both my colleague and our management. More importantly, I had avoided the suffering that would have come from feeding my indignation and carrying that emotional burden for days afterward. As the experiment neared its conclusion, I noticed subtler changes permeating my daily experience. My anxiety about future events had diminished considerably. I found myself more present in conversations, more deliberate in decisions, and more at peace with uncertainty. The Stoic practice of contemplating mortality, memento mori, had paradoxically made my days feel more vibrant rather than somber. On the final evening of my month-long experiment, I sat with my journal, reflecting on the transformation. Had I become a sage, the Stoic ideal of perfect wisdom? Far from it. Had I fundamentally changed how I engaged with life's challenges? Undoubtedly. The most valuable lesson wasn't any particular Stoic technique, but the meta-skill of creating space between stimulus and response, what psychologists today might call metacognitive awareness. This inner space, however brief, allows for choice rather than automatic reaction. And in that choice lies freedom. Looking back, I realized that Stoicism isn't about eliminating emotions or accepting injustice passively, as its critics often claim. It's about engaging with life's complexity from a place of inner stability. It's about recognizing what truly matters: virtue, wisdom, and our capacity for reasoned choice, and letting go of attachment to everything else. Has this month of Stoic practice permanently changed me? Time will tell. Old habits have a way of reasserting themselves when we're not vigilant. But I've experienced firsthand the power of this ancient philosophy to transform modern life, and I've developed practical tools for continuing this journey. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of Stoicism is that it doesn't demand perfection, only progress. As Seneca wrote, "Success comes to the lowly and to the poorly talented, but the special characteristic of a great person is to triumph over the disasters and panics of human life." The triumph isn't in avoiding difficulties, but in facing them with dignity and wisdom. This experiment has convinced me that philosophy isn't merely an academic exercise, but a vital practice for meaningful living. In our age of distraction and reactivity, these ancient teachings offer something precious: a path to inner freedom regardless of external circumstances. The Stoics discovered this path over 2,000 years ago. I'm grateful to have found it today. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one." Perhaps that's the essence of practical philosophy, not endless theorizing, but the daily work of becoming. And in that becoming lies the truest experiment of all.